trade winds have fanned our fair island, Barbados, the most easterly of all the islands in the Caribbean. Barbados is a very special island, as you will see. It is special in the way it was formed. Unlike all the other islands in the Caribbean, Barbados is not volcanic. By total contrast, it is an island that started its upward journey from the ocean bed some 250 million years ago, when the Atlantic plate collided with the Caribbean plate and then folded underneath it. Eons later, as ancestral Barbados neared the surface, the warm, clear waters provided perfect conditions for prolific coral growth. Strong seismic activity continued to thrust this coral mass further out of the ocean, with the most recent and final push occurring just 60,000 years ago, a mere blink of an eye in geological terms. No other coral island in the entire world has been formed in this extraordinary manner. So we can truthfully say Barbados is very special geologically, and our island is also very special historically. We were the only island in the Caribbean that was not subjected to invasions and possession struggles by the French, Spanish and Portuguese, even though at times it did come very close. Several thousand years ago, the peaceful Arawak Indians settled briefly, only to be driven out by the warlike Caribs, who stayed but a short while. It was to be many, many centuries later, in 1625, when Captain John Powell from England landed on the island en route to Guyana. 18 months later, in February 1627, Powell returned, bringing with him some 80 settlers. Fortuitously, he wasted no time in claiming this gem of the Caribbean as a British colony in the name of King James I. Now it could truly be said that Barbados had been discovered. From the very beginning, the early settlers were well aware that trade was the key if Barbados was to be successful. And blessed with the constant trade winds, it was ideally located in this regard, perfect for sailing back and forth to England. These pioneers were also aware that the cultivation of sugarcane could be very lucrative, so it was indeed fortunate that a small party of Dutch Jews left the mounting political problems in Brazil and sailed to Barbados. These Dutchmen were experts in the growing of sugarcane, and perhaps more importantly, they were very familiar with windmill technology, essential for crushing the cane to release the juice. Englishman Colonel Drax was already growing sugar, and had even built a working windmill from a small model he had brought back from Brazil. The Dutchmen quickly used their skills to perfect Drax's efforts, and windmills began to increase in numbers.
Dat wist ze niet te vertellen hè, bij Morgan Lewis.
The alkaline soils in Barbados were very fertile and, coupled with ideal rainfall patterns, provided excellent conditions for growing sugarcane. As a result, the landscape changed rapidly, and within just 2 decades, Barbados had established a sugar industry that would dominate the economy for over 3 centuries. It is true to say that almost every technological advance in sugar production took place on our tiny island. So while the immigrants from Brazil did play a significant role in the growth of the sugar industry, it was the English plantation owners that took the credit and the wealth generated from the exports to Britain and Europe. But make no mistake, underneath the enormous riches and glamour, the stark reality was in no doubt. It was the toiling of slaves imported from Africa that was truly at the root of the wealth generated.
Smerig werk.
By now, windmills had sprung up in every corner of the island, numbering in excess of 500. And by good fortune, the trade winds were at their very best during the dry harvest season, February to April. The wind was free and the mills powerful and easily up to the task of grinding the cane. Today, Barbados is proud that the mill at Morgan Lewis is the only working example in the entire Caribbean. During the harvest season, this wonderful restoration of the
17 jaar oud.
grinding the canes by wind power, just as it did centuries
Jammer.
ago.
Ja.
Had hem nog kunnen zien.
The British military had stationed a garrison in Barbados for many years to quell any possible slave uprisings that might occur. For communication purposes, they built 5 signal stations strategically placed so that each station was in the sight line of at least one other. The flag signals certainly worked and largely achieved their goal for over 130 years. Eventually, a newfangled invention rendered the signal stations obsolete overnight.
Niet zo vreemd.
Today, 3 of these stations have been beautifully restored and are open to the public. The tragedy of slavery continued in Barbados for nearly 200 years, until finally, Lord Wilberforce from England succeeded in realizing his dream of abolition. The date was August 1st, 1834. This hallowed day will always be one of the most important on the Barbados calendar. Sugar exports to England were growing, and by 1838, the greatest amount shipped for the year was nearly 32,500 hogsheads, about 20,000 tons. With the
Bridgetown.
invention of the steam engine, this figure rose to an impressive 150,000 tons by 1920. The old steam engine that provided all the rotational power at Andrews factory was finally retired in 2003 after well over a century of loyal service.
Zo.
It is interesting that from the earliest days of sugar refining, man's ingenuity discovered a rather special byproduct, rum bouillon, a strong alcoholic beverage, much enjoyed, of course, by the Barbados plantocracy. In no time, word reached England that this beverage had a reputation to...
make one feel most rumbustious.
So the obvious name of this
Rumbustious.
delightful spirit was rum, and rum was exported to the motherland in great quantities.
Dat zal wel, ja.
Around the world, Barbados rum continues to grow in popularity and has become a very important export for the island. And Barbados is very proud that every year our rums win gold awards at international rum festivals in Europe and further afield. Bridgetown, being the main trading port, was always the scene of great activity, and the sheltered Carlisle Bay made a perfect natural harbour. But Speightstown, where you are right now, was also very dependent on trade with England. Pronounced Speightstown in local dialect, it was for some 3 centuries known as Little Bristol, as most of the town's trade was directly with the southern English port of Bristol. Today, Speightstown has managed to retain much of its history and charm. The fruit and vegetable sellers still ply their trade, as they have for over 200 years, and many of its oldest buildings are being restored to their former glory. Trade has changed considerably over the years, with less reliance on sugar and more on manufacturing, services and banking. But the trade winds still blow and could be of great importance once again as plans are underway
Die
to
hebben we nog niet
harness that
gezien,
power
hoor.
with a high-tech wind farm. So ironically, we may yet see sugarcane relying on the power of windmills to crush the cane once again.
Once again.
Today, our island's wealth and trade arrives on planes and cruise ships. Tourism is the engine that really drives our economy. We welcome to our shores more than 800,000 visitors by air and sea every year, and we are proud to say that our luxury hotels and magnificent villas can compete with the very best in the world.
Zeker.
So we have looked at nearly 4 centuries of Barbadian history and trade. And yes, in some ways, perhaps we've only touched a fraction of what our island is all about. It is our people that are the key. They are industrious, humorous, creative, and have a zest for enjoying the simple things of life. And above all, cricket. There's an old saying here in the island. Barbados is 21 miles long and a smile wide. How true that still is today.